Hey guys, so welcome back to the next class. Anyways, this class we're going to be talking about some other terms that I didn't mention in the previous video. Okay, so I'm just going to have a little rundown. The reason I'm doing this is so that when we start working, right, when I start showing you some things, how to maybe place your file, organize, right, if I call some names or use some terms, you can better understand or relate with it. Okay, and don't worry, when we get there, I'm still going to talk about it or mention it a little bit. Okay, so the first thing we want to look at now is URL. URL. What is URL? We have now you can have a site like facebook.com, right? That is a domain name, right? But it can also be called or described as a URL. I don't want to go into the nitty-gritty of it where we now have to start talking about DNS and all that. But I don't want to talk about that. Okay? But just know in the back of your mind or somewhere in your mind that when you talk about URL, you might be talking about something like um, 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 a domain name or domain location. Now, what is URL? URL simply means, or rather, it could be said as a uniform resource locator, or you can also say universal resource locator. That's what URL means or stands for. Now, what that simply means is that it basically provides a way for you to locate a resource on the web, that's on the internet or something, right? It provides a way to say, but like just like okay, you ask somebody now, I'm looking for so so and so place, so right? And then the person now gives you description. If you go like this, just follow that road. They are bent to your left. When you get there, you see one signboard. They are come to your right. You see the place there. That's like a description of the place. That's what URL means. It's a locator for you to. It helps you locate a particular file or particular web page or a resource that you might be looking for. Okay. Now there are two types of URL. There are two types of URL. You have the absolute URL and then you have the relative URL. Okay. Now the absolute URL. Okay. I'm going to take into account people that are not people that are watching outside of Nigeria. Okay. So I'm trying to use something that everyone can understand. Okay. All right. So let's assume you're looking for the location to Nigeria, right? You want to get to Nigeria, but you are in where are you now? Where could you be? Okay, let's assume you're in Malaysia, right? You're in Malaysia. So you want to get to Nigeria, right? So basically the location the way you can get to Nigeria from Malaysia using the absolute URL, right? You can know basically what is an absolute URL? Absolute URL is it basically starts from a single location, right? It doesn't take into account where you are at the time. It doesn't take into account what country you are in, right? It doesn't take into account where you are presently. It just tells you start from this particular point. So it's you that know how you want to get to that particular point to start now to start locating what you are looking for. That's the absolute URL. Okay. So if we're going to use absolute URL now to get to Nigeria from Malaysia, so an example of an absolute URL will now be go to the United States of America, right? From there, take a plane going to Canada, right? Then from Canada, take another plane going to Ghana, and then from Ghana, take another plane to Nigeria, right? That is an absolute URL. So regardless of what country you are in, even if you were to be in Ghana already, that you're supposed to just take a plane to Nigeria, if you're using absolute URL will now tell you, hey, go back all the way to the United States. I don't care where you're at, go to the United States and start from there, and then go to Canada, and then go to Ghana, and then come to Nigeria. That's absolute URL, right? But if you're using a relative URL, the relative URL actually takes into account where you are at a particular point relative to where you are going to. Okay, so let's assume you are in Ghana already and you're going to Nigeria. You don't need to go all the way to the United States anymore, right? It just tells you, okay, from the United States, from Ghana where you are, just take a plane to Nigeria. That's it. Now, definitely they have their advantages and disadvantages. Okay. So now the disadvantage of an absolute URL is that it's longer, right? It's longer. Wherever you from wherever you are, even if you are close to the source, it's a longer process to get to that place. Then the advantages of it is that you can't get lost. Basically, that's what it means. You can't get lost in the sense that you start from a point, right? And from that point you are starting from, you always locate where you are at, where you are going to. That's the advantages of it. Then the disadvantages, the advantage and disadvantage of the relative is that relative URL is shorter than Ghana. Just go to Nigeria. It's really short. Okay. Now the disadvantage of the relative URL now is that, let's say you're in Ghana before, right? And you use the relative URL, you usually get to Nigeria. But then what that happens when you now move from, let's say for some reason you now travel, right? You no longer stay in Ghana. You now move from Ghana and then you go to South Korea, for example, right? From there you can't just hop to Nigeria, right? You have to maybe follow another process to Nigeria. Maybe you now get to China and then so it's a disadvantage and it's no longer, you understand, that's a disadvantage of it. If you don't understand, let me know. I would always just shoot me in the comments. All right, I'll always get back to that. Okay. Okay. One of the last things we're going to talk about is the text editor. Now, definitely, text editor is what you need to get started, right? One of the things you need to get started. Right, and then you have different text editors, or as you say right now, code editors, right? But you have different ones. Now, basically, a text editor is a computer program that you can use to edit a plain text or a plain file or plain text file, right? So you can use it to edit a file, a plain text file, change some things, delete some things, right? So now come to the modern day into coding. What we have now, instead of text editors, we have code editors, because code editors are now a more specialized or more specific text editor that works better with um, 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 web files. Let me use the word web files, okay? And when I mean web files, I mean your CSS file, your HTML file, your JavaScript file, your Python file, your PHP files. That's what I mean when I say web files, okay? Now these are examples of them, code editors. You have them right here. So these are examples of code editors right here. You have Bracket, Visual Studio Code, you have Sublime Text, you have Atom, Notepad++, and PHP Storm. But there are other ones, though. The fact I'm showing you this one doesn't mean that there are only 6. There are other ones that are not here. Okay, so there are other code editors or text editors, as you might call them. Okay, so these are the ones I use. Personally, I use Visual Studio Code, right? But when I first started, I remember when I first started code, right? I used to use Bracket. I loved Bracket, right? Especially there was one theme in it, the neon light. I think, can I show you? Let me see if I can show you real quick. Neon light. It really was really nice, and I love to use it. I love to use it in coding because it made the codes really easy for me to look at personally. It's a personal reference. It made it easy for me to look at. Okay, especially when it was difficult sometimes, trying to code or trying to do some things, and it was just not working. But when I look at the code, okay, look at it. This is it. So you can see how the lights glow here and all that. So if you have different file structures and the rest, they're going to have also take some. Okay, you can see them now. Different lights. So it looks like neon lights, and it was just so pleasing to my eyes, and it made learning it a bit more bearable. Okay, there are other themes, so this is just a theme of Bracket. So you can choose whatever theme you want to use. You don't have to use You don't have to use this name. So I can change it back to bracket dark, and have something like this, right? But I just prefer using this because I like it. Okay, I like it. So yeah, so these are just some code editors that you can use. Now this right here is Sublime Text, right? Now this now takes us to file systems. Okay. Now what are file system? Now a file system is the method, and also you can also say data structure is the way you arrange your files into categories or into folders. That's like a filing system. That's what I mean by file system. And it helps you better to keep track of your files, right? Just like let's say in your computer now you have a file, and rather you have a folder, and that folder, that's where you store all your music, or that's where you store all your movies, right? And then inside that folder now, you now have several folders. You have a folder where you now store your action movies. You have another folder where you store your cartoons or animations, right? You have another folder where you store what other genre is there? Those thrilling movies or horror movies, just that kind of thing. So that's your file structure. That's a basic file structure, right? So as you advance in coding or your programming journey, right, you're going to use or encounter some different file structures, right? You're going to have some resources or need some resources that are here and there. Okay, so that's why I talked about URL. So this is an example now of a URL. This one now I just highlighted on my code, right? So this is a what's it called now? This is an index.html file. So this is an HTML file. Okay, all these are links. So I want to talk about that when we start working. So this is an example of a resource or URL. You can see it's going to api.openweather. So this is basically an API, but it's a resource. It's telling my HTML file where I can find this resource. So this is the location now of this resource that I'm looking for. Okay, so that's an example of an absolute URL. So wherever I'm at, whatever file structure I'm in here, right? If I have this on the file, it just say, oh, no matter where you are, go to this starting point. That is openweathermap.org. Go to that website, and then from that website, go into this folder data. From there, go into this folder for 2.5. From there, go into weather, and then put some operations like latitude, set latitude. You understand those kind of things, right? So this is an absolute URL. Okay, so it's just an example. Okay, so we're going to also look at all these. These are lists, and then you have anchors. So this is not what we are doing for today. I just want to give you an overview, right, as we are talking. Now, one reason why I don't use bracket anymore, because you notice that each code editor has their own advantages and disadvantages as you begin to work. You notice that, right? So one reason why I don't use bracket anymore, or I don't use it as much, is because it cannot handle a large file system or large file structure for my project. I notice that it tends to hang or freeze, so I no longer use it but let me know in the comments if you use bracket, right? Use bracket and you have a large file system or large file project and it's working fine. But from my experience personally, it hangs. So I don't use it for large files, for large project. Okay? So this is Sublime Text. You can see that I can handle large project, large file structures, right? Now, a drawback to Sublime Text is that it doesn't have its own internal terminal, right? As a developer that you're just beginning right now, you don't need to know all that terminal. Why do you need terminal? You don't need to know that. I'm just telling you, so as you go on, you don't have it at the back of your mind, right? So one cool text editor I like is my VS Code, right? So this is my VS Code that I use. It has its own integrated terminal right here. So I can open a new terminal here. Okay, so this is my own terminal. So I can write stuff like this. It's like your command prompt or something. So I can type date, and then it gives me the date or something. So this is my its own integrated terminal right inside my code editor. So and it can handle ridiculously large file structures. Okay, so that's one reason why I use VS Code. And also it has I use emmet or abbreviations or snippets to make my coding faster. Okay, with this you can also use snippets on bracket as well as atom as well as sublime text, but I just prefer VS Code. Okay, so I guess that's all for today's class. I hope you like it. I'm really thankful for your support and your like. If you like this video, if you like what I've explained, if you like the class and the journey and you're excited to learn more, please smash that like button. It really helps me a lot. It lets me know that you like the content and I keep producing more for you. Okay, thank you very much, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye bye.